welcome back to my channel, Manga Hoarder. My name is Laura, and today I'm doing a tag video. This is part of Sean the Bookmaniac's series of tags called the Alphabet Soup Tag, where he creates a single tag and each of which the questions start or have something to do with a particular letter of the alphabet. This one is about the letter W. And so I thought I would participate. I'm not the usual type of reader to answer these types of tags, but I like the questions, and I don't always find that my answers match up to the questions, so this one in particular I felt like I had answers to, so I was really glad to do that. I really like Sean the Bookmaniac's channel. If you are a prose reader, particularly Canadian fiction, in my opinion, talks about Canadian fiction, which I am very, very underread in. Go check out his channel. Also has a lovely voice, which I just really like listening to when I'm at work. Anyway, I will link up his channel down below. I am going to answer these questions with both manga and prose novels, so if you're coming from the outside, I'm not just talking about comics here, but if you're here because you want to hear about comics, I am talking about comics here, so there's going to be a mix, and hopefully it'll be relatively interesting. At any rate, I like the question, so I decided to do this. The first one is W is for writer. A writer you've met, know, or have seen in real life. Doesn't have to be famous, but should at least have been published. I actually know quite a lot of writers. I live, or commune, I guess, in a very literary community. Most of the people around me, many of the people around me are authors. Many are self-published, but some of them are published, and I don't really want to talk about anyone too close to me. But one person in particular is a comic book author, and I know some of you already know because I did mention this in my collection tour, but I have this publication here, which is, you know, pretty ugly, you know, ring-bound, probably Staples publication. Homemade thing. This is from an event that I participated in called the 24-Hour Comic. It took place at a local comic book store, and it was a bunch of local artists. I was there too, so that's why the big quotation marks. Local artists who were given the challenge of writing a 24-page comic in 24 hours. This is a worldwide event. It's put on by Scott McCloud involved in this. I feel like he is. It's put on by a variety of people, I think, and it's held annually. And what you do is anyone can participate in it. Anyone can participate in it. This one just happened to be hosted by a local shop. But after you finish your comic, you then submit it to this committee, the organization of this particular event, and if they think you've drawn the best comic, I cannot speak today, if they think you've drawn the best comic, you win. And they will help kickstart your career. So I participated in an event. This one was in 2005, and if you know anything about this particular event, you know that the winner of that particular event was Fiona Staples. And Fiona Staples is local. She also participated at the same event that I participated in, so here's her comic, published in this same crappy volume, crappy binding that mine is. So let's see where mine comic is. Oh, I don't even have a title, so let's see. Oh yeah, so here's mine comic. See you next month, meat bag, it says. Most of it is, that's definitely my best page. The others are pretty bad, but it's just kind of fun to be actually published in the same crappy publication that someone who is not only published but really has gained quite a bit of fame as a comic book artist. I only have one of her comics, so that's this one, which is the kind of like the new Archie, the Archie reboot, which she was involved in as an illustrator, so there's her name up there. But you'll also know her from probably her most famous one work is Saga, or Sega, written by Brian K. Vaughan. So, publish our author. Question number 2 is W is for war, the last great book you read about war, and or one you want to read, or why you don't read war books. I do read war books. I limit them because, as you know, if you've been on my channel for any period of time, I'm incredibly affected by war. It is a very hard topic for me. However, I don't think that that's a good reason not to read war books, so I actually purposely force myself to read them. It does not help desensitize me, though, like I would hope it would. So yeah, I try and read at least one a year. I usually read comics related to war, but usually in kind of more non-fiction comics, and usually about first and second. That's kind of where my interest lies, as far as war goes. As long as, you know, I'm not reading enough war books to want to read more than that, and there's already so much narrative in those two main conflicts. I'm not going to tell you why I struggle with war, because I won't be able to make it to question number 3. I have already tried. That is why my face is red. But besides my almost instantaneous reaction to any war topics, I actually like reading about it. Fascinating stories. And because they're true, I don't know, they're just so much more impactful and more exciting. They're more, I don't know, they're just more than any fiction story. So, the title that I would recommend, though, is Onward Towards Our Noble Deaths by Shigeru Mizuki. I am going to read a little bit at the back, just because it helps. Basically, it's like everything I want to say. It is Shigeru Mizuki's time served in the Imperial Army in World War II. He wrote quite a lot of nonfiction titles about World War II history. I have read a couple of them. I'm still holding off on one of the big ones, which is one of the answers to one of the other questions. But obviously so affected by the war that he just needed to kind of, he needed to write about the war, I think, just to kind of resolve any sort of issues with it. And this one in particular feels like that to me. So as is set against the tropical island background of South Pacific, the story explains or explores the camaraderie of the two troops, oh my goodness, I cannot read, dealing not only with the nightmarish realities of war, like hunger, disease, and death, but also the devastating consequences of the Gyokusai dictate of the Imperial Army that one must die for their country at all costs, if not in battle, then by suicide. Mizuki deftly addresses and critiques the moral depravity of war. And then it says this is one of the first fully formed accounts of war told in comic format. I think because it is written in comics format, it's a lot easier for someone like me to read, kind of easier to digest. This one is definitely taking a completely different perspective. It's coming from Japanese Imperial Army, someone who was actually in the war, lived the war, but also was opposed to the war, or at least trying to resolve their feelings about the war. And this experience, I think, is really close to his own experience, and trying to resolve just the futility of war and the cost of war. It's a good book. And also, look, there's a picture. Look at that cute little face. I think if you watch any past video of mine where I talk about the war, you will notice these funny jump cuts where my face goes from white to pink. And white to pink. And I cannot help it. I instantly turn pink. I do not enjoy war stuff. But I also do. And that's sort of the weird thing about it. Number 3, I am moving on. I'm so moving on now. But I do recommend that book. The next question is W is for www.writer.com. A writer you recommend or want to read whose first and or last name starts with W. Bonus points for both first and last names. Now I'm struggling with manga authors. The only one that came to mind is Yu Watase, or Watase Yu, the same author as like Fushigi Yugi and Sarah's Celestial Legend, and what else? What else have they written? Absolute Boyfriend, Imadoki, various titles, really popular kind of early 2000s mangaka. I haven't seen too many publications lately from them, but Watase is definitely an author and was one of my very favorite first authors that I was sort of aware of when I started reading manga, or when I was watching anime. And so I really, really love Watase. But I haven't really been able to find more, and it was really hard for me to search. I was finding it really hard to search. I didn't think that there was too many places online that were giving me good information. One of the facts being that there really isn't any W's in Japanese. You've got 3 phonetic syllables, wa, wu, and wo, and that's all you've got. And they are transliterated or translated using W's to pronounce those particular sounds. So watase it's actually wa is the letter. And because there's only 3 letters with the w sound in them, it's going to be really hard to find more W starting names. But I would be very curious if you could find some, or if you had any other recommendations, particularly if they were authors whose names had more than one W. Because W's, that the wa-woo wo sounds are certainly, they seem less used, at least from my limited knowledge of Japanese. So that's the one author that I could come up with, and that one I just knew. I just can't think of any others, and I'm looking around here trying to look across the room. I don't really see anybody standing out that also has that. I don't sort my shelves by authors, I sort by titles, so that's not helpful. I do have a couple though. Some of them are, I was surprised actually how many prose novels I had where authors' names start with W, most of which I have not read yet, so I can't really recommend too many. Including Lew Wallace, who's the author of Ben-Hur, which of course has spawned several movies, one more famous than the others. But I picked this up secondhand about 4 years ago. I think with my very first video, I hauled this book and I haven't read it yet. The intention was that I was going to read it in preparation for Easter, and every time Easter comes around, I'm like, oh yeah, I was going to read that book, and it's passed. I guess I should try and just read it rather than try to anchor it to a particular holiday. The reason I want to read it through Easter, not only because it is subtitled A Tale of the Christ, it is about the Passion of the Christ, or Jesus's crucifixion and resurrection, that's sort of staged throughout this book, or throughout the story. It takes place in the Easter season. But it is also a movie that my father and I watch together at Easter. So I thought I would like to read the book and watch the movie at the same time, but it hasn't happened yet. I also have, and the reason I picked it, because Lew and Wallace, they both have W's in. It doesn't start both W, but there you go. Another one with 2 W's is Owen Wister, the author of The Virginian, a classic Western novel about the Virginian, who I don't think is ever named. I think he's just called The Virginian. I think he goes to Wyoming and he has a little bit of a love affair with a local school teacher and a rivalry with Trampas. And I only remember Trampas's name because his name is Trampas. But this one spawned a pretty long-running Western TV show, and was it 60s or 70s? We have quite a bit of it. I don't know if we have the complete series, but we have a lot of The Virginian, and reading the book is quite different from watching the TV show. Of course it takes a ton of liberties. It's the short, and the series is quite long, but I really had fun reading this. Particularly, there is one scene where the Virginian and a friend of his, they go to like a social dance in the evening, and all of the people are there, and there's the coat check room, but they also leave all their babies in the coat check room, and so the Virginian, as well as a friend of his, I remember they swap the clothes on all of the babies. so that when the parents go to take them home, because it's the winter, they aren't going to unwrap their babies to see if it's actually their baby in the clothes that they left them in, you know, their winter clothes. So they all end up taking home the wrong babies. And because it's, you know, the time it is and the place it is, they all have to go miles to go home, and so they don't notice it's not their baby until they get home. So it's just such a scoundrel. It was very fun to read. I liked it. What else do I have? And then the last one I'm going to recommend for books, for novels, so I can't recommend manga for this, is The Trumpet of the Swan by E.B. White. Children's novel, same author as Charlotte's Web, but I prefer this one way better. It's about a swan who doesn't have a song, and he has a friend who gives him a trumpet, and he learns to play it, and it's really, really cute. Read it. Oh, and then number 4 is W is for Wait and See, a book or writer you're not ready to try yet, and why. And I already mentioned Shigeru Mizuki, but I'm going to mention him again. And the book that or the series basically that I'm not really quite ready to read is this tome called Showa, History of Japan by Shigeru Mizuki. This is a 4-volume long series of the history of the Showa period, of which I was born in. And I was born in Showa 55. If you care at all. And I don't know too much about this. I know it's history. I know, of course, that it involves war at least twice. And I really want to read it. I love Shigeru Mizuki. I think it might happen this year in November, because like I said, I do read war books every year, and I think this might be the one that I pick up. He's actually surprisingly easy to read for his serious topics, and he has such a beautiful illustration style. Let me see if I can find something. He has these beautiful illustrations, and then he adds in like a really cartoony look. His characters are always very, very cartoony with strange features, but then he also can just draw so beautifully. So he really mixes in sort of a realism with a little bit of humor. And here's some really, really lovely illustrations. So I do really want to read this. It actually isn't going to take that long. Like, if you actually look at it, you can see there's not a ton of speech bubbles, not a ton of text in it. I really do want to read it. Maybe I am ready to read this. Maybe I'm not ready to read it as I thought I was. It probably will happen this year. I can't think of anything prose that I'm not ready to read. I'm just not ready to read things because I'm busy and I'm having a hard time managing most of my life. Yeah, I can't think of any prose that I'm not ready to read. I have priorities in reading because I read so little. I just have a hard time making the time to read when I have other things that I'm supposed to be doing. So I prioritize certain things, but I don't have anything in particular that I want to read that I'm not ready to read yet. Number 5 is W is for What's the Title? A book with at least 2 W's in the title, bonus points for more than 2. I do have a manga. The manga actually right here is all the W's, and you can see I had pulled it out already. This one is The Wonderful World of Sazai-san, so that one is 2 W's. This is a pretty historical 4-panel comedy manga, and I haven't read it yet, but it's a bilingual title, so it actually is in English, and then it has Japanese in the gutters so that you could learn the language. I think it's actually intended to learn English, but it's just a comedy series. I've been really wanting to read it. I think it's super influential. I think a lot of people name it as one of their favorite series, or I hear it or I see it mentioned in comics all the time. I read something even this week where there were notes about who Sazai-san was so that you would understand the jokes. So yeah, I have that one as something I want to read. I also have this one, and this one actually has 3 W's in it. It's What a Wonderful World by Inio Asano. This one's sort of like interconnected stories, and it's been so long since I read it that I don't remember it too well, but I do remember being really impacted by this when I read it. Yeah, on the back it says, the cruelty of childhood, the delusion of adulthood, the endurance of death, laugh in the face of reality. I remember really feeling like this was significant to whatever point in time I was at that moment. It was sort of a turning point, and this one really worked for me at that moment. I have not read it since. I had originally listed it as one of my favorite comics. I don't remember it almost at all. Definitely a title that I want to read soon. And I have read some Asano, as you may or may not know, since then, which I have not enjoyed. So I was kind of taking a break from Asano before I go back and read this. There's some other things that are being released soon, which I'd like to check out. So, yeah, I'm ready to read Asano again. But I do remember liking it. I remember thinking that it was written really well and it was really impactful and moving, but also I don't remember, so I can't recommend it. And then I have a couple of others with multiple W's, some of which I have not read. Well, I haven't read this one. This is The House Without Windows. There's 3 W's in the title. And it is by Nadia Hashimi. And I bought this actually last year from Book Outlet for the Asian readathon. I was just picking up books by Asian authors, so that's one of the books that I picked up. I will read it hopefully this year. I read a good chunk of those books. I just haven't read them all because I bought quite a few. The other one I picked up here is Sideways Stories from Wayside School. So that's, it's only 2 W's, by Louis Sekar. I really, 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 really love this kid's book. It is so funny. So funny. It was a book that we read in school, and I liked it so much that I had to buy a copy for myself. I actually have only had it for a few years, but it was one that was always really memorable. The one that I have the most W's, still it's only 4, is this one, which is What We See When We Read. So there's 4 W's there, by Peter Mendelssohn. And this seems to be sort of an exploration on reading and imagery, I guess. I was really curious about it. I bought it secondhand. There isn't a lot of text in it. I still have not read it. I have flipped through it, and I still want to read it, as you do when you buy books. I'll read it eventually, right? Next question. W is for women. Oh, I didn't actually think of a title for this. A great book you've read recently by a female. I read most of the books that I read are by a female. Kind of drawing a blank. What have I read recently? I guess I have this one. I'm not quite finished it, but I am reading Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I don't think there's too much to say about it. It's a good book. It's by a female. I'm going to assume this is a female author, but I did recently read Nicola Traveling Around the Demon's World by Asaya Miyanaga. This is an all-ages manga, though it was published as a seinen manga. Essentially, I'm saying that it was published in a magazine that was geared towards adult men, but it is really, generally, anyone could read it. It's got a very, very cute art style, very kind of sketchy, has sort of like a dense palette, but at the same time it feels very light, kind of pencils. I think maybe because it's not printed with black ink, but more of a brown or dark brown ink. But the illustration is incredibly cute. The characters in it very cute. It's about a little girl who is in the demon world, and demons don't want humans there, and so she has to sort of hide the fact that she's a human, and she's traveling around with a demon who is sort of her companion, and he's trying to sell things, and she just happens to be tagging along. But along the way, because she's such a sweet and innocent and happy creature. She just makes friends and happiness along the way, and it is just delightful and cute, and I highly recommend checking this one out. And then the next is W is for word, one you encountered recently in your reading that was new to you and or your favorite word. Well, considering that I read manga, it's rare that there's going to be words that I don't know. And when I read prose, I don't take too much stock in the words that are there. If I don't know a word, I assume I understand it in context, and that the next time that I come across that word, I should understand what that word means. So I don't really see anything, like I don't look words up as I read them. I just hope that I absorb them, and I think I do. But yeah, I don't go out of my way looking up definitions of words. I just don't have time to read like that. But favorite words, I have more like favorite phrases. I do like some words. Like I really like the word tsundoku, a Japanese word which means having so many books that you are unable to read them all. Yeah, collecting a lot of books that you do not read. Tsundoku, I think it's suitable to a lot of the people in the manga community, particularly myself. Yeah, I don't really have a good answer to that question. Number 8 is W is for weary, a theme, plot twist, and or cliche you're getting tired of. I read a bit of romance in my manga, and the thing that annoys me the absolute number one the most is the entitled third wheel. Because there is invariably, in 90% of romance plots, particularly in manga that is geared towards older women, or, you know, not teenagers, there's always going to be a third wheel who had some sort of prior claim, prior stake, prior interest in someone in this coupling. They think that they deserve to be part of this relationship. And so they do everything they can to pursue this person with no regard to the fact that they've already made a choice. I hate that so much, with every fiber of my being. And the last time that I read that, I was reading Everyone's Getting Married, and it did not, it resolved how you think it's going to resolve. It is such a worthless piece of plot. The character never ends up with that person, except for in one exception, and that is Peach Girl. But that is slightly different exception. The character never ends up, it's just such a waste of time. They could have cut out all of the volumes where that plot was happening. It's so cliche, it's so boring, and I disapprove so much of that as a personality, or as a possibility. If someone is in a relationship, you don't get to pursue them. They've made a choice. You gotta wait until they're done. That thing ticks me off so much. So when I read about it, it ticks me off really a lot. I'm a little bit worried that that's a direction that we're going to see. The latest, dang it, what's that title called? Oh, Incurable Case of Love seems to be on the same trajectory. Crossing my fingers that we're going to be okay there. But yeah, that ticks me off. As far as prose, I don't read enough, I think, for anything in particular to make me weary or to get tired of it. I don't read enough of any one particular genre or type of book to get tired of it yet. But maybe if I was focused more on particular genres, then I would start to see more of a pattern. But that's not something I have to worry about. I certainly see it, though, in manga. There's lots of other things that make me weary in manga, but that one in particular is just like, the more I think about it, the more angry it makes me. W is for whippersnapper, a writer who writes or wrote shockingly well at such a young age. That's actually the reason why I had Frankenstein here next to me, just because Mary Shelley was a teenager when this was published, which just is mind-boggling to me. I couldn't do anything when I was a teenager. I don't know how people can put together, like, form words. It's certainly not the very best novel that I've read. There's problems that I have with it, but I'm, you know, just astounded that anyone does anything when they're a teenager. And then the reason that I have Yuwatase next to me is because they were 19-ish, I think, when they published professionally this manga, which is Pajama de Ojama. I think it's like an intrusion in my pajamas. And this guy and this girl, they both have the same pajamas. And when they put them on, they are transported to each other's rooms. And it's cute. It's really, really cute. So, you know, one of my favorite mangaka, I guess, or at least past favorite mangaka, started, like, professionally publishing at a really young age. I think a lot of mangaka do start, you know, making comics early, but they usually go the route of making doujinshi or independent type comics, or working for more popular artists to hone their craft, or going to university and getting a degree or an education in manga authorship, or because you can do that in Japan. So I think that most authors go a different route, and I think Watase went straight into publishing. So I've been doing work since they were about 19. So it's crazy. It's crazy to me. What was I doing when I was 19? I don't know. I don't know how people can do stuff. Like, you're half my age, you're less than half my age, and I just can't believe that you can be successful. I'm not successful at my current age. So how can you be successful in half the time? That's crazy. Then 10 is W is for weakest link. A book in a series or favorite author's oeuvre that wasn't nearly as good as the others. I didn't actually pick anything for this. I guess I was only looking at the first couple and picked titles. Let's see. There is an author. What's their name? Popcorn Romance. Here, just next to me. This author here, Tomoko Taniguchi, I really truly love all of her manga. They're so, so cute. But there's one title that's called Princess Prince, which I cannot stand. It is awful. These ones are all just like really cute 80s punk rock romances that seem to be geared towards like 10-year-olds. They're super innocent, adorable. And then and sort of set in kind of like a real world. But then the Princess Prince is set in some sort of like a fantasy princessy world, and it just, I don't know if it's a translation or how short it is, but it just didn't work in my opinion, so I did not care for that one at all. As far as prose goes, I don't really tend to read a lot of the same author. The only one I've read, actually maybe two that I've read most of their works are Shannon Hale and Tamara Pierce, both write mainly YA. Shannon Hale does jump around, has done some adult titles too. For Shannon Hale, for me, the Actor and the Housewife is kind of a romance novel I did not care for at all. Compared to the other titles, I really, really like other titles. That one I did not care for. And then there's, as far as Tamara Pierce, really like all of her Tortall books. That's that side, but I don't really like the other world that is created. Something Stone Awakens, or the Force Awakens, something like that. Those ones I didn't care for. I have read them all. Like, they're good enough books, and I think maybe I'm just too old. I think they were geared a little bit younger. It's the stories where it's just purely about these friends. I don't care about those ones. But as far as adult novels, I don't know that I've got any that I can answer with. I don't read enough, obviously. And then number 11 is W is for Whosoever, tag wantonly. I don't think I'm going to tag anyone just because this is a different kind of tag, and I'm not really sure who would want to do this. If you do, go ahead, feel free. Consider yourself tagged by me. Yeah, I think that's it. I'm not going to tag anybody, but if you want to do it, you're definitely welcome to. Anyway, I think that's it for today. If you want to answer any of the questions down below, I would be really curious, particularly about an author who's, a manga author in particular, whose name, both first and last name starts with a W, because that was impossible. And also let me know what your favorite word is down below. I'd be really curious about that as well, because it's not really something that I ever normally think about, but I'd be curious if anyone else out there actually has favorite words that they like for some various reasons, the way they sound or what they mean or whatever. Yeah, so let me know those two answers down below. If you want to do this tag, feel free to do it yourself. Anyway, I think that's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.